Welcome down to my 9-foot homemade oak bar. Pour yourself a cold one. You are listening to Bucs in the Basement. My name's Chris, and Craig here is the biggest Pirates fan you'll ever meet. Let's talk Pirates baseball now. Welcome to Bucs in the Basement.
Now I see the changes in this town. They change, they say one thing, but then the next day it's different. They change, but they don't know what they want. All they do is change. Going left, going right, travel day, travel night. That's where we'll go. No excuses, no goodbyes, no one cries, no more lies. We'll never know.
Pirates have gone through, Pirates fans have gone through a range of emotions from month to month, week to week, and sometimes inning to inning, bringing back for the countless number of times here, good friend of the show, Jason Mackey, and for the first time I will say sports columnist, Jason Mackey, covering the Pirates, everything around, giving you some feel-good stories as well. Jason, how you doing today, brother?
I'm doing well, man. I'm doing well. Thank you for having me back on. I appreciate it. I enjoy it.
No, I told you I would have you back on. I know that you're not officially on the beat, but as a former baseball player and a baseball fan, you are kind of tied into what's going on with the Pirates this season, just like the rest of us in some ways.
I'm also there probably too much, to be fair. You know, I feel like I annoy the daylights out of Noah Hiles and Andrew Destin sometimes. It's like, you know, the columnists need to be here all the time, but I don't know, man. I like going to the ballpark. It's part of my routine. I don't really, we're not traveling with this role, so, I mean, like, that's my exposure to baseball in person, so I don't know. I'm not really apologizing for it. I like going. I like being around it, and the Pirates are at a fascinating time right now. I love to see what they're doing. I thought you described it well. You know, been a bit of a roller coaster, great stretch, bad stretch. I guess the water's kind of finding its level, but seeing what they have pitching wise really makes me think.
Yeah, and it's hard not to go to the ballpark, especially with the week that we're recording here, the Dodgers being in town, all of the great players they have on their team, the matchups between, Skeens and Ohtani, Jones and Ohtani. And coming up later today, it'll be already passed by the time everybody hears this, but, the great Bailey Falter versus, Ohtani possibly. So a lot going on here, but like I said, there's just been a range of emotions. And Cherington is a guy that doesn't help himself in some ways because he's a man of many but few words, if that makes sense. The last time he does a weekly show on 93.7 The Fan had been on the MLB Network earlier that day. Just happened to catch it as I was running some errands. But he puts out these quotes that, kind of get Pirates fans, Pirates media, and different stuff thinking. And he said the simplest thing we can think, we're doing better than we were at this point last year, whatever the standings were. We think we're a better, deeper team. We can think we can continue to get better, and that's always a catchphrase, to get better, over the course of 2024. We look at the team, we look at what's working well, and areas where we need to get better. And a lot of people kind of took to that, and you did as well, and kind of looked at where the team was at this time last year and where they're at this year, and it kind of didn't match up with his statement.
Yeah, I didn't understand what he was getting at there, Craig. I still don't. I can guess at it, but I think he was probably either one of two things. He was either talking about, the potential they have, like feeling what they could be, which I would argue that makes it even more frustrating because you look at the starting pitching and the possibilities and they're not there. And then you say, why aren't they there? And it's a lot because of the roster that Ben put out there. I know I had listed a stat where they spent, $32.5 million or whatever, and they basically gotten a -1 WAR out of it. And then you have the guy who did that saying that they're better. I don't get that. Now maybe he's trying to pump the tires of people and saying like, hey, we're a good team. It almost struck me as Billy Bean in Moneyball. Like, you guys may not look like a winning ball club, but you are one. Like that sort of thing. So I don't know. I think I agree with you that Cherington kind of gets himself in trouble sometimes. They try so hard to not say anything, and sometimes they say more than they intend. A lot of times fans are pretty simple people. They want you to care about their team as much as they do. They want you to speak in plain terms. If something stinks, they want you to say it stinks. If you stink, they want you to say that you stink. Simple is better with that, and that's not always the route that Cherington goes.
No, he definitely doesn't. And I mean, I obviously don't know him personally. Seems like a fairly even-keeled type of guy. In Pittsburgh, as fans, we are not very even-keeled. It seems like Derek Shelton, a lot of the times, is the same way. We get excited about managers and GMs that come out, and I wouldn't say just wear their heart on their sleeve, but I mean, obviously with a manager like Jimmy Leland, one that I grew up with, that has that infamous argument with Barry Bonds, would stomp around the dugout, would be, I mean, obviously what Shelton's not going to be doing, but taking some heaters to kind of calm himself down, and we like that type of stuff, and we're not really getting that. But I want to go back. You kind of pointed out the players, signing Rowdy Tellez, Aroldis Chapman, Yasmani Grandal, Marco Gonzalez in a trade, but really kind of gets lumped into that as well. Martin Perez, Michael A. Taylor, Edward Olivares. And I mean, I wouldn't throw Kutch into that, obviously. I mean, Kutch was, it's not a free agent signing. I mean, if Kutch wanted to come back, Kutch was coming back, and, that kind of, goes into that as well. But I also look at that, and I mean, other than, kind of Marco and Tellez and maybe Grandal, I mean, I know Chris on our show was, very adamant about not wanting Yasmani Grandal. But other than that, I mean, a lot of those signings were signings that, fans were at least kind of, I wouldn't say happy with, but at least content with.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I don't mean this in a demeaning way. Like, fan sentiment shouldn't matter. It just shouldn't. Like, whether they get excited or not, I mean, Ben Cherington's brought here to do a job. And he could sign somebody and everybody could get all upset over. Bailey Falter is a perfect example. Everybody was all over the Pirates for Bailey Falter, including me. And we're talking about, what are they doing? What in the world? Well, because of how they look at biomechanics and analyze pitching and stuff, they saw something and they hunkered down, and they were adamant and they found it. Good on them. That's what they should be doing. We were all wrong. They were right. Everybody should acknowledge that. But I don't care if everybody thought the Chapman signing was good. I don't care if everybody thought the Tellez signing was bad or whatever. It's just has it been productive? And to this point, what they did this offseason has not been productive. My opinion on the matter does not matter. Fans' opinions did not matter. Have these guys contributed $32.5 million worth of winning? And the very easy answer is no, they have not. And Cherington is in charge of the group that spends that money, and that just can't happen. In a market as small as Pittsburgh, you cannot miss by that much. I don't know. I guess it's just black and white. To me, it's actually a lesson, I think, for me and a lot of people, that you can react to it, but none of us really know.
Yeah, what the team's looking at, what the GM's looking at. I mean, a lot of that falls on, I mean, the the pro scouting department, as well as, development and different types of things. I mean, obviously, you can go back and look, and like hindsight is 2040 is what I say. I believe it's better than 2020. And looking at the signings that the team could have made, I mean, like you said, fans react certain ways. I looked at who the Pirates could have signed. I mean, a lot of players, they wanted, Carlos Santana. Carlos Santana would be above a Rowdy Tellez at this point in time. Not by much. Rhys Hoskins was the big one that people wanted. I keep on trying to point out that then basically you're signing a first base DH because he's not going to play first base all the time. And I mean, there could be, things that could be done differently, but I do agree with you, Jason, that, I mean, it definitely has to be better, especially if you want to follow up on the comments that you made the entire offseason of, competing, talking about, getting to like around 84 wins, staying in, the wild card hunt the entire year. And speaking of wild card hunt, I mean, you shouldn't be like really, scoreboard chasing or watching and wild card, standing watching. But the Pirates are like less than 2 games out at this point in time. So is Cherington kind of meeting his goal at this point in time?
Yeah, I mean, that's the weird thing, right? Like they're, a game or two out of last place and a game or two out of the wild card. It's just, so I guess you could say that he's succeeding and failing all in the same sentence. But, we just don't know. That's the thing. And I know that's an unsexy answer. I know that, everybody wants to have a definitive in or out, and there's just not. There's just not. And is he below expectations, below pace, below where they should be at this point? I would argue that they are. And I think they probably tell you that they are. I think we could look at individual performance, numbers, outcomes, whatever. And I mean, they should be better than they are. Now, is that ultimately going to land there? No. I'd also argue that they've gotten things that are far better than expectations. But, I think at the end of the season, when you're trying to sort out playoff spots, is there going to be a wild card berth available for somebody who's a couple games under 500? No. I think they're where they're at right now because we're early in the season, which also tells me there's plenty of room to fix things and address weaknesses in that as well. So I come down that they need to identify what they're not doing as well. I'd like to see better bullpen performance, maybe an additional bullpen arm. I'd like to see more offense from somewhere. Maybe that's first base. Maybe that's the outfield. I think the defense could still improve a little bit. O'Neal Cruz could, find a little bit more consistency. I don't think we've seen the best out of Key Brian Hayes, but I look at a lot of those things, Craig, as also fairly attainable. I don't think I'm asking for, anything crazy or anything outside of the means for the Pirates. They should have the prospects to make a move. What they need to do is have the desire or the willingness to take a little bit of a risk to address a major league need. And yes, I do believe they will do that. I just think we're still a little bit early in the calendar for it. Yeah,
and that's where I would call them almost like hot button topics, or maybe even just hot button buzzwords, if that's a thing, is, I mean, the big thing is urgency. I see and I hear that out there everywhere. I hear year 5 on the constant almost, and it's almost like a rallying cry to kind of push the team, in that right direction. But I mean, it kind of almost seems like you had talked about trade, that urgency almost implies, making a trade. And I look to the urgency of, Jared Jones being there on day 1. Trading for Joey Bart soon after, instead of, no offense to these types of guys, but, going out and getting a Tyler Heineman, going out and getting a journeyman catcher, or calling up, Grant Cook earlier in the season, or, going to Carter Binns, bringing up, Nick Gonzalez fairly early on in the season. I mean, I know he was performing, but at times there may not have been that urgency and let him sit down there for a little bit longer. Bringing up Paul Skeens after only, 27 and a third innings, where in the history of this organization, the things that we're kind of used to is that he would have sat down there for another, 5, 6, 7 starts before he would come up. So, I mean, I guess this is a long-winded way of saying, they've been kind of urgent in some ways, if you want to look at it that way, or at least, letting players show them when they're ready. But does that urgency kind of push towards, okay, do we make that trade? Do we try to fill holes this early on in the season, or do we let some players develop and see where those needs, actually do exist?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a boilerplate way of doing this. And I think the Pirates in the past have gotten it wrong. The rub on them is that they keep guys in the minor leagues too, and I'm going back years at this point. We were told how they're manipulating, keeping guys down too long, and they won't bring them up. I don't think there's a cookie cutter way of doing this. Grant Cook, to me, is not an example of their urgency or lack of urgency. Henry Davis was working on swing changes, trying to get confidence, needed a stretch of games, and Grant Cook was going to come up here and catch Paul Skeens a couple times, and that's it. And they knew they weren't going to get anything from him at the plate, and that's fine, but he was going to handle himself with the glove. And you know what? That bought Henry Davis a little bit of time. I don't have any problem with that. Nick Gonzalez, I think they were really trying like heck to get something out of Jared Triolo and not cut bait. And it got to the point where you just couldn't live with it anymore. Nick kept hitting, Triolo didn't. You got to flip the switch. Gonzalez has taken over that position. He's not going anywhere for a long time. I think they rode that out with a few guys. And I think what they do, keeping Rowdy Tellez on the roster, people take that as, they're not urgent. No, I mean, they're trying to, justify the expense. I wouldn't say they're not urgent because, yes, you look at Jared Jones making the team out of spring training, that shows urgency. You look at what they did with Paul Skeens, and frankly, they look pretty smart for what they did with Paul Skeens right now. Keeping him down, slow build-up. Now he's there. Training wheels are off. Him and Jones are outstanding. And he hasn't used a lot of bullets for this season, because you're going to have to be worried about a pitch count. So anyway, I tend to push back on the Pirates are, they always do this and they always do that, and why don't they do more of this? They certainly have situations that they've gotten wrong. I'm not defending them, but it's not always one way or the other.
Are you a fan of the Pittsburgh Pirates and supporting small businesses? If so, Bucs in the Basement has you covered. Introducing the Bucs in the Basement VOUCH store with products from places like Split Rock Coffee, coffee with a purpose, established, owned, and operated by disabled veterans, sworn to protect America, or Camp Craft Cocktails, more than cocktails. It's a mission to build longer tables where everyone is welcome. We try and vouch for these products. Bucs in the Basement, proudly brought to you by VOUCH. Visit our VOUCH store at bucsinthebasement.com or simply click on the link in the show notes. You mentioned, Skeens and Jones, and I mean, that's another narrative that gets pushed out there, and it's not narrative in a negative way, because I mean, we all know with the new playoff format, if you have a strong rotation like the Pirates do, at the current moment, that you have a better chance of winning in those that 3-game wild card setup. I mean, even going to a 5-game or a 7-game, if you have 3 strong pitchers, or at this point in time 4, it gives you a better shot of winning those games. We saw that with Arizona last year. Didn't have, the best team, but got hot at the right moment. And you get in there, but then I think to myself, and I know that I'm not the first person bringing this up, and you even, briefly mentioned it there, was, the pitch counts, the innings count. I mean, I look at, Jared Jones right now, he's got 12 starts. He's got, 69 1/3 innings. He's making about 5 2/3 innings per start. If you look at, where a guy could fall, or, the estimation that some of us made between, 150 to 160 innings, that's like 14 to 15 more starts. With Skeens, between the minors and majors, he's gone up over, 50 innings, approaching 55. He might be able to go a little bit more, maybe not. We're not exactly sure, but I mean, we're not looking at guys that, are or maybe should go, 200 innings this year. And I go back to Spencer Strider last year, who pitched 189 innings after pitching 130 some innings, and then pitched in the playoffs and is now, on the shelf. So, I mean, even if we get to that wild card, I kind of caution, are we going to have to shut these guys down in the middle of the season if the team's performing well to get them to that wild card?
Yeah, I mean, I get you. It's why I think they'll probably wind up doing things a little bit differently pitching-wise soon. And I don't mean sending Skeens down, sending Jones down, having these phantom ramp down, ramp up, Roansy Contreras type things. I mean, I think the ideal scenario, honestly, is for them to go to 6 at some point and just space this out a little bit. I'm kind of surprised they haven't already. And maybe it's injuries and they don't have enough major league arms that they can count on. But when you get Martin Perez back healthy, Quinn Priester's in the rotation right now. We were on our podcast last night for the Post Gazette talking about Domingo Germán, and we were kind of taking opinions. Andrew said that he didn't think we'd see Germán until September. Noah and I argued that we'd see him sooner. And, I think Germán's an interesting case in here, because if you go to a 6-man rotation, he's somebody that you could bring up and count on. And, I mean, they just don't have a lot of guys other than Mitch Keller who's thrown with volume. And if you want to go, Keller every 5 days or something like that and keep him on more of a regular turn, I don't have any problem with that. I mean, he might want that and he deserves that. But, if you're going to space those guys out, it saves bullets in the aggregate. So, they can't keep going the way they're going. If there's an opportunity to shorten a guy's start without doing the 5 innings, 59 pitches debacle that we saw against the Mets, I think they'll look for those opportunities. But, yeah, I mean, they did what they did with Jones and Skeens, or at least with Skeens, so they don't have a Strasburg-type shutdown. And so I would really hate to see that.
Yeah, and you mentioned Germán, I mean, is up in AAA right now. I mean, I don't know, Braxton Ashcraft, because that's another weird one, because you have a guy on the 40-man, you have a guy that's performing well in AA, but then you also have a guy that didn't pitch many innings last year because of injury, and you don't know how many innings he has this year. So that's where, my brain is just I don't want to say, don't try to win this year, and that's not what I'm saying whatsoever, but it's just this is a year where, you have a lot of guys that could be on innings counts, but you also want to try to balance it with trying to win in the, the immediate future here. It's just it's a very weird thing that's going on, because guys, especially in Jones's case, developed a lot quicker than maybe even the Pirates expected. I know that Jones probably expected himself to develop like that, but is showing up a lot quicker. And like you said, it makes it a lot easier. But I would also point out, the Baltimore Orioles last year, they went to a 6-man rotation during the season. to be able to, allow, Grayson Rodriguez that ability to develop and get more rest. And there are guys that, I feel like you mentioned, I feel like Color, it kind of seems like he wants to go on 5 days. And I don't know if it's a performance thing. I don't know if it's a comfortability thing. And I don't know. It's definitely like a weird situation to kind of navigate. And we're talking about this on, June 6th when, it's not even close to Bucktober just yet. But the other thing I kind of wanted to touch on before we get out of here today, which is, the Pirates offense, which has been a very hot button topic. I went through, one of the worst 2-week stretches that, many of us have ever seen. But since June 10th, once Nick Gonzalez was brought up, once we knew Paul Skeens was being brought up, they've been a league average offense. And I don't know if that's a mirage. I mean, they're sitting, 15th as far as OPS during that time. They're sitting, I believe it's like 17th as far as WRC plus, sitting at 97. I mean, is the offense kind of turning around, or is this just like the, Nick Gonzalez spark plug effect with Rowdy Tellez and Michael A. Taylor playing less, and hopefully Brian Reynolds getting ready for what usually is, his best month of the year in June?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more of the latter than the former. The Nick Gonzalez heater, to me, there should be a heater somewhere pretty much at all times, right? Like if your offense is clicking, it's not always going to be Gonzalez, but somebody needs to pick up that torch and go carry it for a little while. And that's the way this offense should function. So, do I think what they've done over the past month is a mirage? No. Do I think, I looked up last night, I think they're 7th in runs since Skeens came up. Do I think this is a top 7 in runs offense over 162? Of course not. The truth is going to be somewhere in the middle. And I think this is what I thought going into the season. I think this is what a lot of people thought, that, this offense should be capable of at least being league average or so. They should score that many runs. Now, they're not going to do it by hitting a bunch of home runs, and that's fine. They should put pressure, draw walks, steal a few bases, hopefully run the bases in a smart way. That hasn't been the case this year all the time or as much as you'd like. But yes, I think this offense is capable. I think we're starting to see signs. What if Henry Davis comes back up here and actually hits? What a huge development for the Pirates that would be. Or if Jack Sawinski magically finds the good stuff that we've seen over the past 2 years and discards a lot of the bad. I'm not saying all of those things will happen, but I think a few of them are certainly possible.
Yeah, and I feel like as fans here, we're hoping that the entire offense clicks all at one time. And unless you have a, offense like the Dodgers, when you see that, top 5, in the lineup, you see every single guy, hitting over 300, OPS is over 800, and some of them well over 800. But you kind of point out that it's just if only a couple guys are going, it makes the offense not look so stagnant. And it kind of seems like during that, awful stretch, it was the entire offense kind of fell flat on its face. And that's not something that, I wouldn't say that we're used to, because we're Pittsburgh Pirates fans, but it's something that we maybe didn't expect this season, especially players with Brian Reynolds. You maybe didn't expect Brian Hayes' back to act up as soon as it did this season. And to me, that's I don't know. I always worry about that. You and I texted about back issues a little bit this morning, and I'm like, I got a bad back. I will always have a bad back. And I don't even know when it's going to act up, because sometimes it's after I cut the grass and go for a run and do kinds of other stuff. And sometimes it's just when I go to pick up a piece of paper in the morning.
I'm pretty sure I got hurt last night sleeping, Craig. Which, according to a Billy Gardell comedy bit, you're getting old when you get hurt sleeping. I went to bed fine. I didn't do anything crazy last night. I covered the game. I drove home and I went to sleep. And I was feeling fine when I went to bed. When I woke up this morning, my back was killing me. So yeah, that's the ultimate embarrassment, right? You woke up, you didn't do anything. But I think the parallel there was somebody on the Pirates carrying the offense and putting them on their back, which, it shouldn't be incumbent on one guy. It never will be. And the Pirates had a weird amalgamation of people struggling all at the same time, and it hurt them. And I don't think you're going to see that again. I do think they've adjusted their approach a little bit. I think you're seeing, whether that's like intentional or just guys with a little bit more confidence and clarity at the plate, you're seeing them more aggressive early in counts, which about darn time would be my statement on it. And then I just think, guys that are not productive, that you're trying to be patient with and afford playing time to, i.e. Rowdy, Michael A. Taylor, et cetera, that are not getting it done, then you're going to start looking at new guys and giving guys new opportunities. There's a chance things could change. And so I think we're seeing a little bit of that too.
Yeah, and just one more thing, Jason. I'm going to make this as quick as possible, be respectful of your time, is that, I look to, if, the Pirates made moves. Everybody looks back because it's the earliest, the most recent success that we've seen. We saw the Pirates trade for a Justin Morneau, a Marlon Byrd, just for those little kick starts to, kind of keep the offense going. And in those instances, we didn't trade, huge prospect capital to be able to obtain that. And I kind of see Pirates fans looking to trade, big prospect capital to kind of bring in a Luis Robert Jr. or different things like that. Are Pirates fans just trying to, just make the team completely competitive for the next few years, or just going and aiming for the best guy they see out there available? Or, should we kind of look for just those little pieces that could make this team, just go over the top just a little bit?
Yeah, I don't know if I feel comfortable giving a blanket answer on how Pirates fans feel or should feel. They want to see something good. I know that, and they deserve to see something good. I think a lot of these moves are circumstantial. What I mean by that is, are you being asked to give up a haul, something that's going to be prohibitive in the future for this year? I don't think they should make that move. If you're asking me for Bubba Chandler, Thomas Harrington, and I don't know, somebody else, and Xander Muth or something like that, good young arms, I'm not going there. But if you're asking me for, I'll use this example, can I get a Carlos Santana for Johnny Severi, which is what, they essentially did a little bit later in the calendar year last year. Yeah, I'm making that trade. I'll trade a guy with upside at the lower levels of the minor leagues, to address a need. I'm not going to sell guys that I think are very much a part of the future here to chase something. So I think all of those things need evaluated individually. And I struggle. I feel like I'm talking like a Pirates front office member or being political about it. I'm not. I swear I'm not. It's just, you can't, there's not one answer that covers all of it. If it's a smart trade, do it. I'm not against doing something. But just don't do anything stupid. And I am largely against trading young arms when you're in a situation like the Pirates, where they're probably not going to pay for quality starting pitching. I want to try to grow that as much as possible. I'm not saying I wouldn't do it. I'm just saying, I would need to be really convinced to let a young starter get away.
Yeah, and Jason, it's a good answer, though. It's, in my eyes, I think it's a good answer just because it's kind of the way I'm thinking as well. But for those of you that don't, please go follow Jason Mackey at JMackey PG. There hasn't been a fake Mackey account out there for a while. I'm going to knock on wood that there isn't one. Also, go follow Andrew Destin, Noah Hiles. They're on the beat for the PG. Read not only Jason's stories on the Pirates, on the Steelers, but also some feel-good stories. There was one out there within the past couple of days about a baseball game that is going to be able to continue to keep going for children with disabilities. Jason, I definitely do appreciate you jumping back on, and I will have you back on again because I love talking ball with you, man.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me, Craig. I appreciate it.
Now I see the changes